Good afternoon, everybody. Let me start by thanking you for being patient with us today. Our Police Service Board meeting went over schedule, but it's an important day for us, and I'm grateful that you stayed and are able to provide the coverage here. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for being here. As I mentioned earlier today at our board meeting, the impact of the events in the Middle East on our city are ongoing and have escalated since October 7th. Our officers are attending almost daily demonstrations and gatherings, some with upwards of 25,000 participants. They are, by their very nature, dynamic situations that can present a risk to public safety and be incredibly disruptive to the city. I want to highlight the complement of officers from each of our divisions from across the city dedicated to Project Resolute. There are those that are pulled from our specialized units as well to help mitigate the impact of events on our city. Unfortunately, we're also seeing a significant spike in the number of hate crimes being reported in Toronto, which can traumatize not just victims, but all members of the targeted community and beyond. Between January 1st and November 20th of this year, there were a total of 323 reported hate crimes in Toronto versus 224 reported during the same time in 2022. Between October 7th and November 20th, there were 78 hate crimes reported in Toronto compared to 37 reported in 2022 during the same time period. This includes 38 anti-Semitic hate crimes versus 13 last year, and 17 anti-Muslim, anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab hate crimes versus 1 last year. There's also been a troubling increase in reported hate crimes targeting the LGBTQ2S+ communities. 9 hate crimes have been reported since October 7th this year compared to 5 last year, an increase of 80%. Among all the hate crimes reported between October 7th and November 20th, 49% have been anti-Semitic. These increases are deeply concerning, and we are committing a significant number of resources to address it. Superintendent Stevenson from our Intelligence Unit will speak about this in more detail shortly. But we have increased the size of our hate crime unit by temporarily reassigning members from other areas of the service. We also launched a new web form on tps.ca to provide an additional avenue for the public to alert us about hate-motivated graffiti. Since October 7th, there has been 63 hate graffiti occurrences that were anti-Muslim, anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab in nature. There were 2 reported during the same period last year. There have been 217 hate graffiti occurrences that were anti-Semitic since October 7th. Last year, at this time, there were 19 reported. The service is continuing to provide a heightened visibility and presence in communities across the city to ensure community safety and to provide residents across Toronto with a sense of security. This requires a significant investment of resources as we deploy officers to prioritize immediate public safety needs, including our response to Priority 1 calls, which are currently averaging over 25 minutes. I can tell you that on a daily basis, 36 officers comprised of 1 senior officer and groups of traffic services, detective operations, and Toronto Police College instructors are drawn from across the city. This is above and beyond what each division does each and every day to address community concerns locally. Again, I want to thank our members who have been working tirelessly to ensure that we are able to prioritize the safety and well-being of our communities. Hate has no space here. And the unwavering dedication of our members to this cause will continue for as long as it takes. I would now like to invite Superintendent Stevenson to to the podium to provide further information on the work of our hate crime unit and some recent arrests.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon. As we know, conflicts outside our borders can have a direct impact on our communities in Toronto, sometimes resulting in acts of discrimination and violence. The increase in hate crimes since October 7th, particularly those of anti-Semitic, anti-Muslim, and anti-Palestinian, does suggest the events in the Middle East are directly impacting public safety here in Toronto. In response to the rise of reported hate crimes, the service has increased the size of our hate crime unit, a dedicated team of 6 officers with 21 investigators and 8 special constables, along with an analyst and a researcher. As the Chief mentioned, this is being done temporarily, assigning members from other parts of our service. The service also launched a new web form on our website to provide the public with an additional avenue to alert our team of hate-motivated graffiti. It can be investigated and removed quickly. This intake form is being monitored 24/7, 7 days a week since it's launched on November 8th, and we have 90 submissions. The additional resources being dedicated to our hate crime unit assists us investigating hate-motivated occurrences and helps us expand our outreach to the community. Whether we are attending schools, businesses, religious institutions, or other organizations, the hate crime unit has been connecting with communities to address concerns, provide reassurance, and explain how to report hate crimes and the importance of reporting. And in addition to the visible frontline officer presence at demonstrations, officers on the ground have also access to hate crime experts to consult with regarding hate crimes, hate speech, and evidence collection. Our hate crime team is continuing to investigate the 78 hate crimes that have been reported to us since October 7th and to arrest and lay charges when appropriate. This includes 11 recent arrests made in relation to the hate-motivated mischief investigation at the Indigo bookstore at Bay Street, which took place on November 10th. As you may recall, this incident involved posters glued to doors and windows of that business and red paint poured on the windows. A news release will be published shortly with more details, but I can tell you the first individual was arrested on November 14th and charged with mischief over. Subsequent investigation by the hate crime unit led to search warrants being executed at a number of residences and vehicles in Toronto yesterday, leading to the arrest of an additional 10 suspects. These individuals have been charged with mischief over 5,000 and conspiracy to commit an indictable offense. I want to thank all the members of our service, particularly those in the hate crime unit intelligence section, for their dedication and relentless effort over the past many weeks to keep our community safe. We will continue to work with our community and law enforcement partners to investigate each and every instance of hate, and we will encourage residents to report all incidents so we can continue to hold people to account. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll take any questions you have.
Chief, is the rallying cry intifada considered hate speech by the police?
Well, I'll call on my superintendent, who's a specialist in this area. Thank you.
I think first to start, we do investigate all reports of hate speech, and we are getting reports from the community of what is reported to be hate speech. It is very complex and contextual. I can tell you that often what may be received as a hate symbol or a hateful chant on its own does not always meet the threshold of what is considered to be hate speech, which is a very high threshold in this country requiring AG consent. But I can tell you any reports that we do have coming in from the community, we're taking very seriously. We're consulting with MAG and seeking any evidence we can to support that report.
Well, but I'm sorry, just to follow up, when we saw last weekend a young boy, I call him a child, leading that chant in the Toronto demonstration, can you specifically address that, whether that is considered hate speech?
I'm not familiar with that report specifically. I can only tell you that when we do receive those reports, we too have the ability to interpret that speech. We can have it translated, transcribed. We seek out experts. We also seek the assistance from MAG. But I can tell you that some of the chants that are reported on its own don't always meet the threshold. There's other factors that come into play, and that's where in our consultation with MAG, we discuss what are those other factors required, and we seek that evidence in order to support those charges.
Now, I'm just looking at this press release, and we're talking about a number of people who were charged in relation to the Indigo instance. Have you arrested, you've talked about all these protests, has anyone been arrested in any of these protests? Because I've seen a lot of these videos online, on Twitter, et cetera, and if you see the translations, some of them are calling for violence against other religious groups. So at the time, the last time we had a news conference about this, I was told that no arrests had been made at any of these protests. I'm wondering now if that's actually happened, if you've arrested anyone, or if you have anyone that's attending these events that can actually translate. Because oftentimes, I've been at these protests, I can't understand what's being said, so I don't know what's being said is necessarily hate speech. So I'm just wondering how you're addressing this.
So I'll speak in generalities, and I'll invite the superintendent for any more specifics. But we have the capacity to attend at these events. Obviously, the police are there. We're paying attention to what's said, and we're certainly documenting any evidence that can be gathered. And where we require translation or expert opinions, we seek that out following that. We've said repeatedly, these are complicated investigations, and they do take time. So we'd make every effort to gather the evidence we can in the moment, and then pursue our investigative steps after the fact, which includes translations and subject matter expertise on understanding what's being said.
So no one's been arrested at any of these events yet?
I'm not aware of any specific arrests of that nature.
Anything subsequent to any of the protests? Have any arrests been made subsequent to any of the protests?
Well, there have been arrests made at protests for issues around keeping the peace and violations of how they conduct themselves from a peaceful perspective, but no charges in relation to speech.
Given the continued rise in hate crimes, how effective would you say the command centers are in the Jewish communities, the ones that are still set up there?
Well, listen, there's a number of ways to measure effectiveness. One of them is what the community is telling us. And the community has spoken very clearly to me personally, spoken to our members on a daily basis, that the command posts where they are located have provided a great sense of comfort, have been valuable and appreciated by the community. And I've received feedback in that regard many, many times personally. And if you attend there and look inside the command post, you can see the expression of gratitude from the community.
When there have been incidents, how helpful has it been to have those command centers there?
Well, I think the one thing about hate crime I'll say is what we repeatedly call for is reporting. And any avenue we have to break down barriers to access us, to provide information and to report is what we strive to do. And the command posts are another element of our ability to break down barriers to access us, to let us know what's happening in the community and report incidences that are of concern.
Chief, when you talk about reporting, I know that's been a bit of an issue. Both the Jewish and the Muslim community have said that they feel that there's been under-reporting. I know last week the National Council of Muslims said that they have gotten a lot of calls from people who will speak of incidents to them, but then not want to go to police. How much of an issue is that, and is there anything police can do to get people to come forward if they're experiencing hate crime?
That's a great question, and I think we're here today for a number of reasons, and one of them is to get the message out on, first of all, that we are invested in doing everything we can to hold those responsible accountable. We've invested a significant amount of dedicated resources in that regard, and today you are receiving a news release that is showing the success of some of that work. People are being held accountable. We are pursuing evidence. We are doing warrants. We are looking to gather all the evidence we can to bring people to justice. So part of what we want is people to be reassured that the reporting does matter and that whenever possible, we will take every action possible to bring people to justice who commit those offenses.
But is it your assumption, Chief, that things are actually worse than what the data suggests because people are not coming forward and reporting these incidents?
Well, I think it's underreporting is still very much an issue. So I would say the answer to your question is yes, there is more, hate going on than the statistics we have available today. We know it's an underreported offense. I know from personal contact in the community around the hesitation of reporting, and that's a number of different communities. So it's something that we're very attuned to. So these numbers give us a snapshot in time today, given the context of what's available to us. But we know there's much more for us to learn and much more for us to investigate.
Actual hate crime charge? Sorry.
This is just a quick follow-up to that, Chief. I've been speaking with hate crime victims for the last month, and I spoke with a Toronto resident who recently told me that she was spit on for wearing religious attire, but she did not report it to Toronto police. And she said it's because, quote, I don't necessarily believe the police have my best interest at heart or people like me all the time. What is your message to Toronto residents who feel that way?
My message to Toronto residents is to please come forward and report to us so we can engage with you and make available, first of all, any supports that are necessary, and secondly, we can do everything we can to gather evidence. Today is an example of the success of the hate crime unit with the arrests they've made, and I'm hoping our continued efforts and continued announcements through the media around our enforcement will bring a sense to members of the community who might not understand exactly how far we're going to try to investigate, that we are indeed leaving no stone unturned as we pursue the evidence that's available to us. Reporting is the start of that journey, and I'd encourage everybody to please report.
Chief, are you open to expanding your hate unit? We noticed that in the paper it said it went up from 6 now to 32. Are you prepared and looking to potentially expand that number even more?
Well, I think, I'll take some guidance from the superintendent who runs the unit, who's done an exemplary job bringing together a group of investigators who are doing incredible work, that if we need to resource it or expand it, we'll take steps to do that. And as I've said before, we are in this for as long as it takes. And we're going to do everything we can. And hate has no space in this city. And we will do everything we can to make sure it has no space.
Just to follow up on that, you mentioned that resources are becoming a problem as this is taking a toll on police resources. Can you talk to us about which departments resources are being pulled from, what is being impacted?
So I will get not into great specifics, but I did mention some of our specialized functions, some of our investigative functions have been moved around to prioritize this over other work. So other work is paused at the moment, and as time goes on, we'll assess the impact and what lines of service or business we might have to close. But that's very much an operational discussion the command team has on a regular basis to do everything we can to provide the best operational support we can, but we're recognizing that there is a challenge and we need to prioritize our work, and to prioritize our work when we're as lean as we are means pausing or shutting down some elements of our other work.
Now, Chief, I'm looking at this list of offenses, and not one of them actually says hate crime. You're not being charged with a hate crime specifically. There's about 20 offenses here. Mischief over 5,000, and then conspiracy to commit an indictable offense. So if these are, in fact, you're calling hate-motivated mischief, why are we not charging people with a hate crime?
So I'll ask the superintendent to answer that.
So I think it's important to note there's a difference between what is hate-motivated and what is hate offenses. So in the criminal code, there's actual defined hate offenses, which is hate propaganda and, for instance, hate speech. But in terms of what is motivated by hate, that is in terms of sentencing. So what the criminal code allows for is when there's a criminal offense and there's evidence that that offense is motivated by hate and there's evidence of that, it goes towards the sentencing by the judge.
So there's not a specific charge that you would lay, it would just be part of what the judge would use as criteria by which you can sentence them. Okay, and then is there a specific charge that you could have charged them with? Like, when you're dealing, I mean, you mentioned that there were 58 charges, or 64 actually in the amended press release. So was anyone actually charged with a hate crime, or were they just related crimes that occurred with these incidents?
So currently we have a number of criminal offenses that we've laid charges that are, we believed, are suspected to be hate motivated, which we will proceed in court with. In relation to those specific hate propaganda charges in the criminal code, we have 2 ongoing investigations.
So, but no charges have been laid?
No charges have been laid. Under that hate, those actual hate charges within the criminal code for hate propaganda.
When you're looking at,
Can I just put a finer point on that? And listen, we did a technical briefing for media, and we're certainly prepared to provide more technical information on the structure of the legal framework which we operate under. But to be clear, there are charges announced today that are as a result of hate-motivated allegations. They are hate-motivated. That's the undertone of the mischief, is there hate motivation behind it. That's the context in which we operate in a legal framework. So the idea that there's no hate crime, I just want to be clear. They are charges that are alleged today, announced today, are charges that, as you have listed, many of them are hate-motivated, which is the legal framework in which we operate. And we could provide some more technical information on how that legal structure exists, but I just don't want to be left anybody under or feeling that there's been no hate crimes laid. There's charges laid that are in regards to incidences that are clearly hate motivated. At least that's the allegations today that we're putting forward in this news conference, and that's the legal framework in which we operate.
Chief, could you just give us some clarity on this? It seems to be a case of hurtful speech versus hate speech, and those two seem to be conflated. Perhaps you or the superintendent could help people differentiate the two.
So, in terms of speech itself, we do have the Charter freedom of speech, and there's a balance to be laid there. And when we talk about hate speech charges in the criminal code, there is AG consent, and that consent exists because of the Charter. So I think that when we get reports of hate speech, as investigators, we investigate that fully. We collect the evidence we have, we consult with our MAG, Ministry of Attorney General partners, and then it goes as a package to the Attorney General. And then only with that consent can we in fact lay a hate speech charge. And I can tell you, we are vigorously investigating any report of hate speech that comes in the Toronto Police Service. There are challenges, of course, with reports that come in that isn't observed by a witness, that might come in through social media. There's a number of evidentiary things that have to occur there in terms of verifying videos and speech, or videos and date and time, but we are doing that. We are working with our partners at this time.
Okay, one more question.
Chief, can I just ask you, you made, during your remarks this morning, a couple of times you made the distinction of saying that the police are here to protect and keep people safe, but also you have to respect people's freedoms. And I was wondering if you could just talk or elaborate on that fine line of safety, but also respecting people's rights to be on the streets and to protest and to raise their voice.
Yes, I appreciate that. And it's, you know, we have a long tradition in the city of acknowledging the people's constitutionally protected right to assembly and to free speech. And we have a long tradition in this organization of keeping people safe when they gather, whether to demonstrate or for other purposes in our public spaces that we hold so dear. We are also a unique city in that we draw people from other jurisdictions here on a regular basis. And as you've heard me speak of this morning, in some cases upwards of 25,000 people gather. That poses, of course, a number of unique considerations for our incident commanders, which is why you heard me say this morning, we've stood up our major incident command center, and it's to give us the ability to have the right resources allotted and the flexibility to move resources around in a real way to ensure that when these demonstrations or gatherings happen, that they're done so, that they happen in a safe way. And in the context of what we do, we certainly keep people safe while they exercise their right to assemble and demonstrate. We ensure that people are as safe as possible, whether it's from traffic or other people who may be coming to join in the assembly. But we are very committed to that and doing what we can to allow people to express themselves. But to be clear, as I said this morning, there are limits to all of that. There are lines, and when the lines are crossed, we will do what's required. I understand the challenges as it relates to speech and the legal context in which we operate, and we certainly acknowledge that, but we take every step to capture the evidence, gather it, analyze it, and do what we can, and when opportunities present themselves, take enforcement actions. But in the meantime, we will keep our city safe, and we will keep our community safe.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming. The chief needs to get back to